the chairman of the American Cornerstone Institute, Dr. Ben Carson. My wife Candy and I are delighted to be here, particularly when we have a conservative political action conference associated with Latino Wall Street, two groups that believe in the American dream. There have been so many who've said the American dream is dead now. Have you realized that we're the only country that even has a dream? There's no French dream. There's no Canadian dream. They used to think they had one. But we're the only country that really has a dream. And it's something that we need to fight very hard to keep. And there are those who are trying to convince people that we're victims, that victimhood is rampant in our country. Victimhood is rampant in our country. And this is the way that people like Mamdani in New York win, by convincing people that they're victims and that you can solve the problem by blaming other people, by taking the resources of other people. Class warfare has been such an important factor. When I was a child growing up in Detroit, there were so many people who were telling me, you're a victim, the system is against you, you can't win, abandon your dreams. And I was fortunate enough to have a mother who didn't believe in that. Even though she had only a third grade education, got married at age 13, had a very difficult life, she knew that education was the key. So very important, because what the socialists do, what the Marxists do, is they miseducate people so that they don't know the facts. When people don't know the facts, they become very easy prey. And that's exactly what is going on in our country right now. Most of the kids that you see running around on these campuses talking about the river to the sea, they don't know what river, they don't know what sea. They don't know anything. But because they don't have a solid educational foundation, they're like leaves blowing in the wind. So easy, unfortunately, to change. And I was a terrible student, and I was listening to that garbage, and I was feeling like a victim. But my mother made me stop. She made me start reading books. She turned off the TV. I wasn't very happy about it. Neither was my brother very happy about it. But we had to do it. And as I started reading those books, I started reading about people of accomplishment from all backgrounds and how that knowledge and that education empowered them, I began to realize that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is not somebody else, it's you yourself. And that changed me. And I got to the point where if I had 5 minutes, instead of watching TV, I wanted to read a book. And I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class in the course of a year and a half, much to the consternation of all the ones who used to laugh and call me dummy, who are now coming to me saying, Benny, how do you work this problem? And I would say, sit at my feet, youngster, while I instruct you. I was probably a little obnoxious, but it sure felt good to say that to those turkeys. But I had the same brain when I was at the bottom of the class that I had at the top of the class. And that is really the key factor to recognize here. And think about how those who want to fundamentally change our society are doing it through miseducation. Look at the way that they're attacking our children who have brains that are not fully developed. The brain starts to develop immediately at conception, and it develops millions of neurons every day. Later on, billions of neurons every single day. That's why when a baby is born after 9 months, that brain is still developing at a very rapid pace. And that's why little newborn babies sleep 20 to 22 hours a day, because their brain is developing so fast. It continues to develop right up into the mid to late 20s. Some people it never develops. But, the fact of the matter is, we're taking 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids who have undeveloped brains and taking advantage of their natural curiosity and suggestibility and trying to confuse them about whether they're boys or girls without even notifying their parent. And that is nothing short of child abuse that is going on in the very midst of our society. Those are the kinds of things that are allowed when people are silent and don't speak up. And it's so important that those of us who are people of faith and of common sense really speak up and be bold. One of the problems is that people are very timid, and that really affects your life. When I was a kid, fear had a very big impact on me because I was afraid of dogs. And every time I came out of the house, first thing I did is look around and see if there's a dog. And I'd be on my way to school and I'd be almost there, and then there'd be a dog. And I'd have to turn around and go all the way around the block, and then there'd be another dog. And I was late to school all the time. The teachers were tired of me. And then I met a man. I was 8 years old. He said, "Benny, if you don't show any fear of the dog, they won't bother you." He says, no matter how big and ferocious they are, if you don't act like you're afraid of them, they won't bother you. I said, "Are you sure about this?" He said, "Absolutely." I said, "I'm going to try this out." There was a ferocious dog down at the end of the block. I said, "I'm going to walk down there." So I go strolling down there quite confidently. And Rusty, that was the dog's name, sees me. And he comes charging, running, snarling, barking, runs right up to my leg. And I said, this was a mistake. And he sniffs my leg, goes back to the porch and lays down. That was the last time he ever came after me. He would go after other people. He would never bother me because he knew I wasn't afraid of him. And that is such an important concept. Moving forward without fear, it gives you what you need to be effective.